The star charts hadn't prepared Captain Sarah Chen for the sight before her. The massive structure orbiting Proxima Centauri wasn't just alien. It was art. Crystalline spires stretched for kilometers, catching starlight and refracting it in patterns that made her wonder if she was witnessing a language written in light itself. The stellar horizon, humanity's most advanced deep space vessel, seemed primitive in comparison. "Any response to our greeting?" Sarah asked, her eyes still fixed on the alien megastructure. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, each monitoring their stations with the kind of precision that came from years of training and countless first-contact simulations. None of those simulations had prepared them for this. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez shook his head at the communications console. "Nothing on standard frequencies, Captain. But there's something else." His hands danced across the holographic interface. "I'm detecting patterns in the light reflecting off their structure. It's changing. They're communicating through light." Dr. Emily Watson, the ship's xenolinguist, practically leaped from her station. "The patterns, they're not random. Look at the periodicity." Sarah watched as the crystalline structure's brilliance shifted, creating cascading waves of color that seemed to pulse with purpose. "Record everything." Dr. Watson, work with AI analysis to decode. She never finished her sentence. A voice filled the bridge, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't sound in the traditional sense, more like thoughts materializing directly in their minds. "We acknowledge your presence, vessel of individuals. Your arrival was predicted. Your nature puzzles us." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Sarah straightened in her chair. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel, Stellar Horizon. We come seeking peaceful contact and exchange of knowledge." "You speak alone." The others remained silent. "Explain." "I speak as the commanding officer of this vessel, but each member of my crew has their own role, their own voice." There was a pause, and the light patterns shifted to deep blues and purples. "Inefficient, dangerous, yet intriguing. You will dock. We must understand this aberration." The massive structure rearranged itself, crystal segments sliding apart to reveal a docking bay that seemed to form spontaneously. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The technology gap between their civilizations suddenly felt like a cosmic joke. "Helm, take us in." Slowly, Sarah activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for first contact protocols. This is not a drill." As they approached the docking bay, Dr. Watson's console lit up with activity. "Captain, I'm detecting some kind of field emanating from their structure. It's like a network, but more organic. Almost like..." "Like what, Doctor?" "Like a neural network, but on a massive scale. I think their entire structure might be conscious." The implications hit Sarah like a physical force. They weren't just dealing with aliens. They were dealing with something that might redefine their understanding of consciousness itself. The docking procedure was seamless, the alien structure actually adapting to accommodate their ship's design. As the airlock sealed, Sarah assembled her first contact team. Herself, Dr. Watson, Lieutenant Rodriguez for communications, and Dr. James Chen, no relation. They're xenobiologist. "Enter. Your protection is assured. Your individuality must be studied." The alien structure opened before them, corridors forming as they walked. The walls pulsed with soft light, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking through the neural pathways of a vast mind. They entered a chamber that seemed to shift and flow around them. From the walls emerged forms, not solid, but composed of light and energy. They coalesced into roughly humanoid shapes, though they constantly shifted and flowed into one another. "We are the collective. We are unity. You are fragments. Incomplete. How do you function?" Dr. Watson stepped forward, her eyes wide with understanding. "They're a hive-mind, Captain. Not just connected. They're a single consciousness spread across multiple forms." The light beams swirled in what might have been agitation. "You understand the concept. yet you remain separate. Explain. Sarah took a breath. Each human is an individual. We think independently, make our own choices. We work together, but we maintain our separate identities. The chamber darkened slightly. Inefficient. Chaos. Division leads to conflict. Unity is strength. Yet, the beings moved closer, studying them with what felt like intense curiosity. You have achieved faster than light travel. You create. You explore. How? Without unity. Perhaps, Sarah suggested, it's because of our differences, not in spite of them. Each human brings unique perspectives, different ways of thinking. When we face challenges, we have millions of different approaches to consider. The light beams merged into a single form, then split again. A test, then. We will present a problem. Show us how your fragmentation addresses it. The chamber transformed around them. They found themselves surrounded by holographic representations of a star system. In the center, a star riot with unusual activity, solar flares, and magnetic storms far beyond normal parameters. This system exists. The star's activity threatens all planets within. Unity has found no solution. Show us your individual approaches. Sarah looked at her team. Without prompting, each of them began analyzing the problem from their own perspective. Dr. Chen studied the biological implications for local life forms. Lieutenant Rodriguez focused on communication possibilities with any affected civilizations. Dr. Watson examined patterns in the solar activity that might indicate predictability. And Sarah saw something in how they all worked together, yet separately. Each approach illuminated different aspects of the problem. Where a unified consciousness might be trapped in a single way of thinking, their diverse perspectives were creating a more complete picture. Look, she said, pointing to where Dr. Chen and Rodriguez's analyses overlapped. The magnetic storms follow patterns similar to neural activity. What if the star itself is trying to communicate? The light beings flared brightly. Impossible. Stars are not conscious. Not by your definition, Dr. Watson interjected. But look at these patterns. They're regular, repeated, like a language we don't yet understand. The chamber hummed with energy as the collective processed this. Your fragmented perspectives. They create new possibilities we had not conceived. This requires further study. Sarah felt a mix of pride and concern. They'd impressed the aliens, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being studied like fascinating insects. We're happy to continue sharing knowledge, but we should establish some diplomatic protocols first. Diplomatic protocols. The concept seemed to confuse the collective. Why are such things necessary between those who share knowledge? Because, Sarah explained carefully, each human represents not just themselves, but their own unique collection of experiences, beliefs, and ideas. We need to ensure that any exchange respects both our individual rights and our collective interests. The light beings separated and reformed several times, their colors shifting rapidly. This complexity, it is both fascinating and disturbing. You function as many, yet achieve unity without unity. We must understand. Sarah exchanged glances with her team. They'd come seeking first contact, but they'd found something far more profound, a fundamental difference in how consciousness itself could be organized. The implications were staggering. Perhaps, she offered, we could learn from each other. Your unity could teach us about cooperation on a scale we've never achieved, while our individuality might show you new ways of approaching problems. Yes, but there is risk. Individual thoughts. They can be dangerous, unpredictable. Yet, they can also see what unity cannot. As the light beings continued their analysis, Sarah realized they'd stumbled upon something revolutionary. This wasn't just first contact with an alien species. It was first contact with an entirely different way of being conscious. The real challenge wouldn't be communicating across species, but across fundamentally different ways of existing. The adventure was just beginning. The crystalline chamber transformed again, this time creating what appeared to be multiple testing environments, floating in space around them. Captain Sarah Chen watched as members of her crew were each directed to different sections by streams of pulsing light. "We must understand the extent of your fragmentation," the collective announced. "Each will face the same challenges. We will observe your individual responses." Dr. Watson found herself in front of what appeared to be an alien artifact, covered in shifting symbols. Lieutenant Rodriguez faced an array of communication frequencies that seemed to modulate in response to thought. Dr. Chen stood before a holographic representation of an ecosystem in crisis. And Sarah faced a tactical display showing a complex space battle scenario. "These are simulations?" Sarah asked, studying the intricate details of her tactical display. "Reality and simulation are constructs of individual perception," the collective responded. "Solve the challenges before you. Show us how fragmentation approaches unity." Sarah focused on her tactical scenario. A fleet of ships was caught between two hostile forces, with a nearby star's radiation making traditional defensive formations impossible. As she studied the problem, she could hear her crew members muttering to themselves, each deeply engaged with their own challenges. Dr. Watson's voice carried across the chamber. "These symbols, they're not just a language. They're emotional states. The artifact isn't just communicating information, it's trying to share feelings." "Incorrect," the collective stated. "The artifact contains mathematical proofs. Your interpretation is flawed." "No," Watson insisted, her excitement building. "Look at how the patterns flow. It's like poetry, but with mathematical precision. It's both." The creators found a way to merge emotional expression with mathematical truth. The light beings swirled in what might have been agitation. Individual perception creates false patterns. Unity sees only what is. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Rodriguez had started humming, matching his voice to the frequencies before him. The communications array responded, creating harmonics that seemed to dance with his voice. "It's music," he said softly. "The whole thing is one giant symphony." "The frequencies are designed for data transmission," the collective corrected. "Your interpretation is inefficient." "But that's just it," Rodriguez argued. "By treating it as music, I can hear patterns that might be missed if we only think of it as data. Listen." He hummed a complex sequence, and the array burst into colors that matched the harmonics perfectly. Dr. Chen had been quietly working with his ecosystem simulation, introducing small changes and observing the results. "Fascinating," he muttered. "The system isn't failing, it's evolving. What looks like crisis is actually adaptation." The collective's light patterns became increasingly erratic. "You all see different truths in the same reality. This creates chaos. How can progress occur without consensus?" Sarah had been listening while working on her own challenge. In her tactical display, she'd started moving ships in unexpected patterns, using the star's radiation as cover rather than treating it as an obstacle. "That's exactly how progress occurs," she said. "Each of us sees different possibilities, different approaches. Together, we see more than any one perspective could show us." She turned to face the main concentration of light beings. "Look at how we're all solving these challenges differently." Dr. Watson found emotional truth in mathematics. Lieutenant Rodriguez discovered music and data. Dr. Chen saw evolution where you saw decay. And she gestured at her tactical display, where her unorthodox strategy had created a safe corridor through the hostile forces. "I found protection in what seemed like danger." The chamber hummed with energy as the collective processed this. "Your fragmented perspectives create multiple truths. This defies Unity's understanding of reality." "Maybe that's why we're out here," Sarah suggested. "Maybe the universe needs both kinds of consciousness. Your Unity sees the absolute truths, while our diversity helps find new possibilities within those truths." The light beings coalesced into a single massive form, then exploded into thousands of smaller points of light. "This requires adjustment. We have existed in unity for so long, we had forgotten the possibility of multiple truths." Dr. Watson stepped forward, her eyes shining with revelation. "Your consciousness evolved toward unity, didn't it? You weren't always a collective mind. The lights dimmed slightly. There was, before, time of chaos, of division. We chose unity to end conflict, to achieve perfect understanding. But perfect understanding doesn't always lead to perfect solutions, Sarah said gently. Sometimes the best answers come from seeing things differently, from challenging our own perspectives. This is why you achieved space travel without unity, the collective seemed to realize. Each fragment contributed different paths to the same goal. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. Our diversity isn't just about having different thoughts. It's about having different ways of thinking entirely. The chamber shifted again, this time creating what appeared to be a three-dimensional model of human brain activity. We have been monitoring your neural patterns during these tests. Each mind approached the challenges uniquely, yet all achieved viable solutions. That's humanity for you, Sarah smiled. Give us a problem, and we'll find a dozen different ways to solve it. This creates uncertainty, unpredictability, risk. Yes, Sarah acknowledged. But it also creates possibility, innovation, hope. She gestured to her crew. Look at what we just accomplished here. Each of us saw something different in your challenges, and each of those perspectives revealed something true. The collective's light patterns began to pulse in a new rhythm, slower and more contemplative. We must process this. Your fragmentary consciousness presents both danger and opportunity. Further tests will be required. Sarah felt a chill at those words. She'd begun to suspect that these tests weren't just about understanding human consciousness. They were about assessing whether humanity's individual nature posed a threat to the collective's unified existence. As if confirming her fears, the chamber began to reconfigure itself once more, the light beings spreading out to surround them completely. Prepare yourselves, fragments of Earth. The true test begins now. The first warning came as a subtle shift in the crystalline structure's resonance. Captain Sarah Chen felt it before any alarm sounded, a vibration that seemed to run through the very foundations of the alien megastructure. The collective's light patterns suddenly flared with intense brightness. Danger. Approaching stellar anomaly. Unity cannot process solution path. The chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the star they orbited. Massive solar flares erupted from its surface, far larger than anything in human records. The star's corona writhed with plasma storms that seemed to defy physics itself. That's not natural stellar behavior, Dr. Chen said, his hands flying over his portable scanner. The magnetic field patterns are completely chaotic. Unity is aware, the collective responded, their light patterns showing signs of distress. All models fail. Consensus cannot be reached. Protection protocols insufficient. Sarah watched as the alien structure's crystal segments began moving, trying to reposition themselves to shield against the incoming solar storm. But the movements were jerky, uncoordinated, like watching 1,000 people try to dance in perfect unison and failing. Your unity is working against you, Sarah realized. You're trying to find one perfect solution when you need multiple approaches. Lieutenant Rodriguez's console was lighting up with warnings. Captain, I'm detecting some kind of resonance pattern in the solar activity. It's like what we saw in the communication test, but massively amplified. Dr. Watson rushed to his station, her eyes widening as she studied the data. The star, it's not just active, it's responding to the collective's presence. Their unified consciousness is creating a feedback loop with the star's magnetic field. Impossible. Stars are not conscious entities. Maybe not in the way you understand consciousness, Sarah countered. But look at the patterns. Your unity is so powerful it's accidentally syncing with the star's magnetic field. You need to break the pattern. The chamber shuddered as another solar flare lashed out, this one aimed directly at their position. The crystal structure's attempts to adapt became even more erratic. Unity cannot divide. Unity is strength. Unity is going to get us all killed if you don't listen. Sarah shouted. Let us help. Let us show you another way. There was a moment of hesitation, then, "Proceed." Sarah turned to her crew. "Dr. Chen, focus on the star's magnetic field patterns. Rodriguez, work on breaking that resonance feedback. Dr. Watson, see if you can find a way to communicate with the star itself. We need multiple approaches, working in parallel." Her crew sprang into action, each attacking the problem from their unique perspective. Dr. Chen began mapping the chaos patterns in the star's behavior, looking for predictable elements within the randomness. Rodriguez used his understanding of harmonics to identify frequencies that could disrupt the feedback loop. Dr. Watson studied the star's patterns like a language, searching for meaning in the chaos. The collective observed their light patterns shifting between confusion and fascination. Your fragments work without unity, yet achieve coordinated action. This defies understanding. We don't need to understand the same way to work together, Sarah explained, dividing her attention between her crew's efforts and the tactical situation. Sometimes different understandings create better solutions. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, the star's magnetic field, it's not random at all. It's following fractal patterns, but they're too complex for any single perspective to grasp." "The resonance," Rodriguez added, "it's like overlapping songs, each affecting the others. If we can introduce counter-harmonics." "It's not trying to attack," Dr. Watson interrupted, her voice filled with wonder. "The star, it's trying to establish equilibrium with the collective's consciousness, but their unity is too rigid. It needs chaos to balance the order." Sarah's tactical training kicked in, seeing how all these pieces fit together. "Your unity is too perfect," she told the collective. "The star's natural chaos can't find balance with it. You need to allow for imperfection, for diversity within your unity. This contradicts unity's fundamental nature. Then unity needs to evolve," Sarah insisted as another solar flare rocked the structure. "Look at how we work, different approaches, different understandings, but all working toward the same goal. Unity doesn't have to mean uniformity." The chamber filled with swirling lights as the collective struggled with this concept. To fragment is to risk chaos. To remain rigid is to ensure destruction, Sarah countered. Sometimes you need chaos to create new order. A massive solar flare, larger than any before, began building on the star's surface. They had moments to act. "Trust us," Sarah pleaded. "Let us show you how diversity can strengthen unity." The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, the collective's light began to separate, not into chaos, but into a harmony of different patterns and frequencies. "We will try." What happened next would be debated in scientific circles for decades to come. The collective, following the human's example, allowed itself to diverge into multiple patterns of thought while maintaining its underlying connection. As it did, the crystal structure began to move in new ways, each segment adapting individually while contributing to the whole. Rodriguez's counter-harmonics merged with the structure's movements, creating a complex dance of interference patterns that began to calm the star's fury. Dr. Chen's fractal analysis guided the overall pattern, while Dr. Watson's insights helped maintain a sort of communication with the star itself. The final solar flare, instead of destroying them, wrapped around the structure like a gentle embrace before dissipating into space. The star's surface gradually settled into a new pattern, still active, but no longer chaotic. "We understand now," the collective spoke, its voice somehow both unified and diverse. "Unity without diversity is stagnation. Diversity without unity is chaos. The balance is life." In the aftermath of the solar storm, the crystalline structure had transformed. Where before it had been uniform and rigidly geometric, now it displayed subtle variations, each segment maintaining its own character while contributing to the greater whole. Captain Sarah Chen stood with her crew in the chamber, watching as the collective's light patterns danced in new, more complex ways. "We are changed," the collective spoke, its voice now a harmony of distinct tones rather than a single unified sound. Your fragment thinking has altered Unity's fundamental nature. Not altered, Sarah suggested. Evolved. You've found a way to be both one and many at the same time. The chamber filled with swirling patterns of light, each pursuing its own path while weaving together into larger designs. Dr. Watson watched in fascination, her xenolinguist's mind racing to understand this new form of expression. Your communication patterns are different now, she observed, more nuanced, like a conversation rather than a broadcast. Yes, we maintain unity, but now we also contain perspective. Individual segments contribute unique patterns to the whole. It is unsettling, fascinating, dangerous, necessary. Lieutenant Rodriguez had been monitoring the star's activity. The stellar patterns have stabilized completely. It's like the star and the structure found a way to dance together instead of fighting each other. That's what diversity allows, Dr. Chen added, studying readings from the transformed structure. Adaptation, evolution, the ability to resonate with different frequencies rather than trying to impose a single pattern on everything. Sarah noticed something else, the way the structure was now interacting with space itself. Rather than trying to impose its will on the vacuum around it, it seemed to flow with the natural currents of gravity and radiation. You're not just thinking differently, she realized. You're existing differently. Your entire relationship with the universe has changed. Yes, Unity saw universe as thing to be ordered. Now we see patterns within chaos, beauty in difference. But questions remain. The chamber shifted, creating a display of Earth and its various ecosystems, cultures, and civilizations. Your world contains such fragment chaos. How does it not destroy itself? Sometimes it tries to, Sarah admitted. We've had our share of conflicts, wars, disasters. But that same diversity that creates conflict also helps us find solutions. When one approach fails, another can succeed. Dr. Watson stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the display of Earth. Look at our history. Every time humanity faced extinction-level challenges, it was our diversity that saved us. Different cultures preserved different knowledge. Different minds found different solutions. We survived because we weren't all thinking the same way. Yet you seek unity through your explorations, through contact with others. We seek understanding, Sarah corrected. Connection. But not at the cost of losing what makes each of us unique. Look at my crew. We're united in purpose but distinct in our methods and perspectives. The collective's light patterns swirled thoughtfully. We observe your crew unity exists without enforced consensus. Each fragment maintains independence while contributing to whole. This seems inefficient, yet results suggest otherwise. Efficiency isn't always the most important factor, Dr. Chen offered. Sometimes you need redundancy, variety, even apparent chaos to create resilient systems. In biology, we call it biodiversity. In culture, we call it diversity of thought. Both are essential for long-term survival. The chamber transformed again, this time showing a real-time display of the structure's internal operations. Where before everything had moved in perfect synchronization, now there were countless small variations, adaptations, and innovations occurring at every level. Some segments experiment with new configurations, the collective observed. Others maintain traditional patterns. Some combine approaches. Unity remains, but methodology diversifies. Is this progress? That's for you to decide, Sarah said. But look at how much more adaptable you've become, how much more capable of handling unexpected situations. Lieutenant Rodriguez had been quiet, studying the structure's new patterns. It's like an orchestra, he said suddenly. Before, you were playing a single note, perfect, pure, but limited. Now you're playing a symphony, with each instrument contributing its own part to create something greater than any could achieve alone. The collective's lights pulsed with what might have been pleasure at the analogy. Your metaphor creates understanding. Different patterns of thought enable different patterns of comprehension. This is what we have forgotten in our pursuit of perfect unity. Sarah watched as new crystal segments began to grow from the structure, each slightly different from the last. You're not just accepting diversity, you're creating it, growing it. Yes, unity discovers that strength comes not from enforced sameness, but from harmony of difference. Yet this creates new challenges, new risks. All growth involves risk, Sarah acknowledged, but staying the same can be the biggest risk of all. The chamber hushed as the collective processed this. When it spoke again, its voice carried new harmonics, new depths of understanding. We propose exchange. Unity will share knowledge of collective consciousness. Humans will share wisdom of beneficial fragmentation. Together, perhaps we discover new forms of existence neither could achieve alone. Sarah looked at her crew, seeing the excitement in their eyes. This wasn't just first contact anymore. It was the beginning of something entirely new. A way of bringing together the best aspects of both individual and collective consciousness. We accept, she said, but let's establish some guidelines first. Ways to protect both your unity and our diversity as we learn from each other. Agreed. Universe is vast. Contains room for many forms of consciousness. Perhaps, purpose of intelligence is not to find one perfect way, but to explore all possible ways. As if to emphasize this point, the structure began to sing, not with a single voice, but with countless harmonious tones that filled the chamber with music unlike anything human ears had ever heard. It was unity and diversity made audible, order and chaos dancing together in perfect balance. The future that opened before them was both terrifying and beautiful, a future where individual sparks could ignite the fires of collective wisdom without being consumed by them. 3 months had passed since the solar crisis, and the changes were visible from light years away. The collective's crystalline structure now sparkled with a rainbow of colors, each segment maintaining its own unique pattern while contributing to breathtaking larger designs. The stellar horizon had been joined by other human vessels, creating a small fleet that looked like floating fireflies next to the massive alien construction. Captain Sarah Chen stood in what had become known as the synthesis chamber, watching as human researchers and manifested forms of the collective worked together in ways that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Observer Sarah, the collective addressed her, using the new form of speech they had developed to bridge their different types of consciousness. The exchange progresses beyond initial parameters. That tends to happen when humans get excited about something new, Sarah smiled. We can scale back if it's too much. Unnecessary. Unity finds. Joy? Yes, joy in the chaos of human interaction. Each fragment brings unexpected patterns, new possibilities. Dr. Watson was working with a group of light beings, developing what she called a consciousness translation matrix. The project aimed to help both species better understand each other's thought processes. The fascinating thing, she explained to Sarah, is that they don't just think differently. They experience reality differently. Their unified consciousness perceives patterns we can barely imagine, while our individual minds see details they never noticed before. Nearby, Lieutenant Rodriguez had set up what he called a harmony station. He was working with collective segments to explore how their new diversity of thought could be expressed through music. The chamber often filled with strange, beautiful compositions that blended human melody with alien harmonics. Question, the collective interrupted. Human children arrive tomorrow. Purpose unclear. Risk factors high. Sarah had been waiting for this concern to surface. The children are part of an educational exchange. We learn best when we start young, and they're naturally curious about new experiences. Children are incomplete fragments. In a way, Sarah acknowledged. They're still developing their individual identities. That's why they're perfect for this exchange. They'll help us understand each other in ways we adults might miss. Dr. Chen joined them, carrying his latest research data. The collective's adaptation to diversity has been remarkable. Look at these patterns. They've developed what I can only describe as conscious evolution. They can actively choose which aspects of unity and individuality work best for different situations. Unity learns from human chaos. Humans learn from Unity's patterns. Both become more than either could be alone. Sarah watched as a new crystal segment grew from the structure, its pattern unlike any before it. You're still creating new variations. Always. Universe contains infinite patterns. Unity now understands. To stop creating is to stop living. The chamber shifted, displaying a map of nearby star systems. Dozens of points of light indicated sites where human and collective cooperation had already begun. The joint research stations are showing promising results, Dr. Chen reported. Our different approaches to science complement each other in unexpected ways. Human intuition combined with collective processing power has accelerated our understanding of the universe exponentially. Yet challenges remain, the collective noted. Some human fragments fear Unity's influence. Some Unity segments resist diversity. Balance requires constant adjustment. That's the price of growth, Sarah said. Change is never easy, but it's better than stagnation. Dr. Watson had been monitoring communications from Earth. The impact is spreading beyond just our two species. Other civilizations are watching how we work together. They're starting to reach out, wanting to understand how different forms of consciousness can cooperate. Unity observes pattern. Galaxy contains many forms of thought. Perhaps purpose of intelligence is to find ways to connect them all. Sarah considered this, not to make them all the same, but to help them understand each other, to create something greater than any one form of consciousness could achieve alone. The chamber filled with a new pattern of lights, more complex than any before. Proposal: expand exchange program. Create space where all forms of consciousness can meet, learn, grow. A consciousness embassy, Sarah suggested, a place where different species can explore ways of thinking and being without losing their unique identities. Yes, Unity provides structure. Humans provide spark. Dr. Chen looked up from his data. The implications for evolution are staggering. We're not just talking about biological or technological advancement anymore, but the evolution of consciousness itself. And we're just at the beginning, Sarah added, watching as another human ship emerged from FTL travel nearby. Every new contact, every exchange of ideas, opens up more possibilities. Unity sees future pattern, many paths, many forms of thought, all connected, yet all unique. Beautiful chaos within greater harmony. The chamber resonated with the thought, crystal segments shifting to create a stunning display of light and shadow. In that moment, Sarah could almost see it, a future where consciousness itself became an art form, with each species contributing its own unique brushstroke to an infinite canvas. We'll need to be careful, she cautioned. Maintain protections for both unity and diversity. Ensure that no form of consciousness tries to dominate the others. Agreement. Protection protocols essential, but potential reward exceeds risk. Together, we create new ways of being. As if to emphasize this point, the structure began to pulse with a new rhythm, one that somehow managed to be both soothingly familiar and excitingly alien. Human researchers paused in their work, feeling the harmony of it in their bones. Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented, not just first contact or cultural exchange, but the birth of an entirely new way of existing in the universe, a future where the spark of individual consciousness could ignite the fires of collective wisdom, creating light that could illuminate the darkest corners of space. The adventure they had begun 3 months ago wasn't ending. It was transforming into something greater than anyone, individual or collective, could have imagined. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other forms of consciousness were watching, waiting, preparing to add their own unique patterns to the growing symphony of existence.